Hello?
Hey, Tim. How are you? It's
What's going
Jim.
on, bud?
Hi, Jim.
And Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Tim,
What's going on?
appreciate you jumping on the call here with us tonight. We definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
We were just saying, it's like you joined our group, and it's gotten so good. And it's really very cool to see all the people from all over that had joined the whole Old Men That Used to Race group. And guys like you and me, we would have probably never had a chance to even talk before. But
Right.
I see some of the stuff that you have, your paths cross with some of the guys that we've raced against, and no, it's a pretty amazing thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the East Coast, and here I am on the West.
Yep.
And, I raced on the East Coast. I raced against a lot of guys that are some of the guys that you guys know.
Yeah, I kind of looked up to him. I know you and I texted a little earlier, and I'm about 5 years behind you.
Right.
So it's like when I was just breaking in, some of the guys you had been racing against in the Nationals were guys that we were looking up to, as a kid watching, JoJo and Finkelday and some of those guys. So it was.
Yeah, I was going through some of my results on MX Evolve, and
Yep.
Just looking at some of the guys, and it was Jimmy Ellis kind of at the end of his career.
Yep.
He was riding some of the 500 Nationals.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. Local
Mickey
guy.
Kessler.
Yep. Mickey Kessler.
He was there. Andy Stacy.
I remember them. Yep.
Andy Stacy. I think I saw you guys had Frank Stacy on, didn't you?
No, we didn't have Frank Stacy. We had Barry Higgins on.
Barry Higgins.
Barry Higgins. Okay.
He was awesome.
No, I got that. Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, so Andy rode the 83, 82, 83, the early 80s in the 500. JoJo Keller.
Oh yeah.
We know JoJo. JoJo's been on the show.
Yeah, you know JoJo.
We've
But,
got a good couple of JoJo stories, and I'm sure you've got a couple of good JoJo stories.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really, we rode in a lot of races together, but I never really found him in the race. He would be up front, so sometimes
he'd be blazing fast, or he would break.
What's that?
He would be blazing fast, or he would break. Something would break on the bike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was probably a little bit more consistent, but he would go for the wins,
Yeah.
And I wasn't quite at that level.
Hey.
I rode behind Brock at Lake Whitney.
Yep.
For about 20 minutes at the National there, in second.
Yep.
And then I ended up fourth in the first moto. I dropped back a little bit, and I think I ended up with a fifth overall at Lake Whitney.
I saw some of those results in those races. It was pretty cool. I mean, you had some seriously good results, and
I did pretty good. I rode in 82. I rode 3 500 Nationals on my own. Me and my dad went back to Castle Rock in Colorado, and I got a 17th there. At my first one, I crushed my foot.
Oh.
And then we went to Washougal, and I got a 13th there. And then we went to Carlsbad. There was a national there, and I got an 8th.
Wow, nice.
So I broke the top 10. So I kept getting better.
Yep.
And then that's when I got my Yamaha support ride.
Yep.
For the 83 season. And then I got the good equipment and the mechanic and plane flights.
Yeah.
And all the goodies. So I was kind of like a factory rider. I reached my goal, kind of a Yamaha factory guy.
I mean,
awesome.
in 3 races, you earned enough points for national number 61, and that was back when you actually earned the number as opposed to having guys with career numbers stuck in the middle.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, I rode 83, and then I earned number 27 in 1984, but I retired. So I didn't even use 27, which was kind of sad, but...
it's ironic. It's ironic because when I was looking at that stuff today and I saw that you had earned national number 27, one of the guys that around here, John Dowd, he was national number 27 back when I was racing, and I was trying to qualify for the local ones. So it's pretty cool to see who has different numbers and who you might know. And
yeah, right.
I mean, I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. I got to ride. Dave Osterman was my mechanic.
Yep.
And my motorcycle was the best bike I'd ever ridden to that point. You know, they had it. I had great suspension. I had Olean rear shock. The motor was worked on. It was real fast.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I had a really good bike.
Those bikes were really good back then too, because that was in the era just before Honda decided to water cool the 500.
Mono shock.
Right.
You know, I think once the water cooling came around for the big bores, that kind of changed the game a little bit. I know Brock started struggling a little bit on the air cooled bike, but when you guys are all on air cooled bikes, those YZs were always at the front, and there was a pack of them.
Yes, yeah. Warren Reed,
yep.
He was a teammate, Yamaha support, and he would break in the top 10, and I was in the top 10.
That's awesome.
And Brock was up front, and
so
yeah.
So one of the other cool things, the really cool things, I think, is your results that year earned you one of the AMA Rookie of the Year awards.
Yeah, I was shocked. I won that. I finished in the top 10. I kind of faded through the year.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of a reason for that too, but I hung on for 10th in the standings.
Yep.
And I won the Rookie of the Year. That was
mm-hmm.
a big deal. And Ron Lachine won the 125.
Yep.
Billy Lyles won the 250, and then I won the 500.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. You know, a lot of people kind of remember me by that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I wasn't there long, so.
You don't have to be there long, but you were there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was there.
And Tim, how old were you then when you were 17, 18 years old?
What's that?
Were you 17 or 18 when you were Rookie of the Year? How old were you when you were Rookie of the Year?
I was 21.
21, okay.
Yeah, I was 21. 21, maybe going on 22.
Yeah.
Which back then they kind of put pressure on you to when you were that old. You know, because then we had Ron on the team, Lachine.
Yep.
He's 16, you know, and he's kicking butt.
Yep.
And you're like 22, and you know they're looking for youth, you know, especially back then. You know, it was just different back then. When you were 23, 24, you were done, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the thinking.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't true, but that was the thinking, because now you got Eli.
Yeah.
Know, showing everybody that, you know, how good you can be, at 30 years old.
It's crazy to see those guys now. I mean, when you think about it, yeah, back in '83, it was like, you know, one of those, well, what are you going to do next? And you think about '83 was the first year that Hannah was over on Honda.
That's right.
Right.
And it kind of rejuvenated him, but it's still, most of the guys were done. How many guys, you know, retired by the time they were 24, 25?
Right.
And you just
Bob
didn't do it.
An old man.
And you got Dowdy that just threw his leg over a bike at 25. Superhuman.
Yeah.
Dowdy's a whole. I
don't know. Just
he broke the mold.
Yeah, the thinking. We just athletes, and just this thinking was just so different 40 years ago. You know,
Yep.
I would have loved to ride now because I'd be, you know, the factory. So you always felt. I just felt like. Yeah, they were kind of looking for the next young guy, you know, and at 22, I felt so old, you know.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have, but I did. And then I had an injury. I had an injury at the beginning of '83 when I got that ride. It was kind of a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did all those results on a broken right wrist. I broke my right wrist, kind of like what Ricky Johnson did.
Yep.
The same injury.
Navicular.
Yeah, I did that, and I did it the day after Anaheim. I had a great race at Anaheim, my first Supercross.
You qualified. You were in the main.
I got into the main, and I was super stoked.
At Anaheim, that's awesome.
And back then, the Golden State Series were really big, you know, here in California.
Yep.
And so the next morning, they said, you need to race up in the high desert at Racetown 395.
Mm.
And so I came off this wonderful night, and then I go up to the desert up there, and I was just riding. I started to just ride with a lot of confidence just because of the team.
Yep.
and my bikes and my mechanic and just the team gave me so much confidence. I was really ready to rip,
Yeah.
And I went up there and I was dicing in the 500, and they really wanted to get that 500 title with the Yamaha in the Golden State. And Donnie Cantalupi, I was going with Donnie Cantalupi down towards the end of the race, and I tried to make a pass on him before on the last lap. We came through some whoops, and then there was a big jump at the checkered flag. Anyway, I went for the pass, and we got tangled up, and I flew off the side of the track, and that's where I crashed.
Ooh.
And I stuck my right arm out, and I snapped my wrist.
Yep.
So that was the morning, or that was the day after Anaheim.
Oh man.
So now I'm like, I freaking blew it. I'm on this team.
Yep.
And now I'm hurt, but I kind of was in denial, and I didn't go to the doctor. I just said, well, I'll ice it. You're kind of used to doing that with, being a motocross racer, getting injuries, injuries, right?
If nobody reads the X-ray, you can still race, right?
Absolutely.
But the thing, I didn't get an X-ray, and the thing wasn't getting me better. So finally, I got a doctor friend here, and we took an X-ray, and he says, "Dude, you got a broken wrist. You got this broken." So I had to go. I couldn't race any Supercross. I tried a little bit, but I took 3, 4, or 5 weeks off, I think. Tried to race some Supercross, but the jumps were too big. I couldn't do it. So I think I raced Daytona, and I didn't do very well there. And I think I got like 22nd at Daytona. But then the 500s were coming up, and that was kind of my specialty. So I was probably riding it. I would have to take my wrist and just suck it up.
Yep.
And so I kept. So I started racing the 500s, but I did as good as I did with a wrist that was,
Yeah.
probably 60, 70%, 50% of what normal would be. It was my throttle wrist, so I didn't have that flexibility,
And I don't know, like there's still a lot of people don't realize that bone, it takes a good 7, 8, 9 months to heal, or it doesn't heal.
Yeah.
It doesn't heal in some cases. I mean, look at RJ. RJ had it partially fused so he could drive the trucks, and now he's got his whole wrist fused. I saw him post something about that not long ago.
Yeah, I just watched an interview today on YouTube, and he's still dealing with that. But yeah, I think I was retired 10 or 15 years, and my wrist still hurt.
Yeah,
it feels good now, but it hurt for a decade.
I tell you, that's one thing. One thing that you and I share, I broke that bone, so I can tell you what, I completely sympathize with you, and I know exactly how it feels. And living up here in the Northeast, every time it's going to snow out, believe me, my wrist tells me.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
so you just don't. You want to, if you're going to break something, break your left wrist.
Don't break your right wrist. You have to turn the throttle for crying out loud.
Whenever I see you guys go down, I'm always like, just if you have to break something, break your left wrist.
And you know what?
Break your right. It's just. So anyway, because the jumps weren't that big on the outdoors.
Yep.
I was able to just get through it, but. I just wished I would have had one more year with Yamaha after that, healthy.
Right.
Because I really think I really could have done something. I really think I could have been up there on the podium and maybe even win a moto or something. I don't know.
You were right there. You were right there in some of those motos.
Yeah, and that was 83. It was competitive. 84, the 500 kind of started. It kind of leaned out. The competition wasn't as great,
Well, there was
guys.
What season was it? It wasn't too long after that they started going to like split classes. Like you have 250s for half the year and then 500s for half the year.
I think they did. Yeah, I think they did.
So hey,
I think I do remember that. It kind of got a little funky. That's kind of why I retired.
Yeah.
The reason I retired too was the teams at the end of the 83 season. We used to have the big teams, right? There'd be 5, 6, 7 guys on every team.
Yep.
So there was a lot of hope to get a factory ride, and that's what I got, But at the end of '83, they decided they were going to go to 1 or 2 rider teams.
Right.
You know, it was going to be Brock and I think Ricky, you know, in '84.
Yep.
And they were going to have nobody else. And I mean, we just went from a team of like probably 7, 8 guys. I mean, Cantalupe was on the team, Reed,
Ronnie,
you know, Brock, Ronnie, I don't know, Bowen. You know, the teams were huge.
Yep.
And so they were downsizing. Just the way the factories were going to do their racing budgets and racing teams was going to change.
Not only that.
And so I just decided I was hurt. I felt awful. Like the last 3 nationals, I could barely hang on to the handlebar.
Right.
And so my results were getting worse, and I knew I wasn't going to have a ride, and I just was kind of done.
Yeah.
I was just done. Well, and so a lot of guys decided to do different things. They went to Europe, and guys were riding crazy bikes. They were.
Oh yeah.
I think Magoo was riding a KTM.
Magoo rode a KTM by '85.
I think Phil Larson was riding a Mako. I mean, their guys were just picking up whatever rides they could, you know.
And also on the flip side, Yamaha was just around that time they were turning everything over to the production based bikes.
Exactly. So that's when they went from the OWs to the production.
Right. And that was, I remember Ricky was struggling with that too.
Yeah.
Because right after you had quit, he was still on in, I think, 84? He didn't go over there till 86, maybe? I think.
Was it 86 when he went to Honda finally?
I think he went to Honda finally in 86, but that all had to be weighing down on everybody's minds. Hey, not to change the subject, but Clint Hardick just posted, he wanted to know, how did you get your nickname? I know your nickname's a Locomotive.
Yeah, it was such a cool nickname. You know, it was given to me by Drew Lean. He was the founder of 100%.
Really?
Yeah, he was a buddy out here. The Indian Dune scene that we all raced.
Yep.
You know, the local scene.
Yep.
And Drew was kind of one of the guys, one of our buds, and he started 100%.
That's
back
cool.
In the day, but one day he came up. He was a creative guy. And he just started calling me Locomotive Locey, you know. He's like, "Hey, Locomotive," and it just kind of stuck. It was like, that's kind of cool, you know.
I was going to ask you that anyway. I'm glad.
It kind of fit my style.
Yeah.
And it kind of fit my name. And then I had some pants made, and I said, "Hey, why don't you put Locomotive on the back?" And back then, you know, we all had nicknames. You know, back in the day.
Yep.
You know, everybody had a nickname, so it was kind of cool to have you know, there's Osho and Hurricane.
Yep.
And all that, you know, that was that era. So
you don't
Locomotive,
see that.
Whenever I would see Go Brecker, he never called me by my name. He just called me Locomotive. So I was always Locomotive.
Now this is
funny.
funny.
Some people, I'm just Locomotive.
So one of our people in the group just put a post up, and he said that, you know, a couple of things that was special was the last few years of Works Bikes, but he also flies for Delta. He's a pilot, Casey Bates, and he says Drew's daughter is a flight attendant for Delta, so he knows her. Talk about a small world.
Cool. Cool.
That's crazy, though.
Yeah, so that's how I got that. And yeah, that was cool, and it stuck with me my whole life. So yeah.
So
it was cool.
I was looking at a couple of things and thinking, you know, me being a Northeast guy.
Right.
The time that you were there, I started racing in '84. I started a little bit later, but those years it was like really kind of influential on me. And I'm a Northeast kid that just dreamed about being in Southern California because you guys had races during the week, and all we were doing was we were going out and riding in sand pits and power line tracks and pounding out laps. But I'm like, these guys are racing in Southern California at night.
Right.
And I know that you had to have come up during that scene because that just was.
Yes.
I thought that was so cool. You know.
Yeah, I did. I think it was '79. Was I the number? I got the number 1 plate for AME. And my dad, I remember, said, "You want to go for the plate?" And we knew that was going to be racing 3 times a week.
Oh.
It was going to be Friday night at Dunes.
Yep.
Saturday night in Bakersfield at the Sprockets Park.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sunday back at Dunes. And it was going to be like that for a whole year. Oh. And this guy named Mike Shoemaker, he raced for Team Tam.
Yep.
Back in the day.
I remember that.
You remember Mike?
I remember him, yeah.
He was a great rider, and me and him battled the whole year, but we rode 3 times a week.
Oh.
we were Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday.
And
we
it's
did that for a full year, and I edged them at the end. We fought it out, boy. It was intense.
And that's 3 days in a row.
I got the number 1 plate, and I won back then it was a big deal. I won a YZ 250, brand new YZ 250.
That's cool.
And $1,000 cash.
That is cool.
So that was kind of a big deal back then. So
no series
doesn't sound like much now, but
that can springboard your next season though.
Yep.
You know.
But it gave me it gave me some confidence, and it was kind of fun.
That's awesome.
I had a hard time at night. I wasn't the greatest. The Indian Dunes on Friday night, it was pretty dark.
Yeah.
And I just kind of had I didn't like to really go my fast.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't feel comfortable seeing what's in front of me, you know.
Well, I would think that the shadows on some of the holes.
I would get beat by guys on Friday night, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of back then I didn't have it figured out like I do now, but then we'd get to a day race and I'd lap the same guy, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would get, I would win occasionally, get my seconds and third, get my points.
Yeah.
Get my points, and
stay in and do what you can, and just keep plugging away because you're gonna get them on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think we learned back then, that the guys, because they talk about the guys now about being consistent. We were points racers. We learned how to, we didn't go for the win. We didn't go for the podium. It was like, if we were just getting points, we were gathering points, the CMC Nationals, the Winter Series.
Yep.
We just got our points, one weekend you'd be on, you could win, you get second, third, but you get a fourth, or you just always be in there, and you'd always get those points. And I don't think they race like that now.
No.
So the guys tend to not be like we were back then, as far as being consistent.
Yep.
And on your off days, learning how to just ride it out, and get those points.
Yeah, exactly. You got to salvage what you can and just make it work, and then work a little bit harder on your days off the next week to try to figure out what you got to do to come back stronger.
Right.
I know. I mean, where we are, the NESC was the local race, and granted, it was only every Sunday, but it's the same way. It's just you had to be consistent week in, week out, or you might as well just hang it up.
Yeah. So I raced. My local track was Indian Dunes.
Mm-hmm.
So I raced because I lived up north of LA.
Yep.
So, that was my local track. It was only 35-minute drive from the house. So, I was, that was my place. But I grew up with that same Santa Clara riverbed going down by my house in Ventura. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, I'd be on my mini bike or XRs or whatever. And so I always rode in the Santa Clara riverbed. So that was my kind of soil.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really, thrived in that loose, soft, sandy soil because I just grew up in it,
Yeah.
So that's why I think Indian Dunes was such a good fit for me because of that loose, sandy soil. And it didn't bother me, and I love to go fast in it.
Yep.
But I kind of hit a wall there because I didn't ride the hard stuff very good. The clay, the hard clay.
Yes.
So that's when me and Pops, we decided we had to go to Saddleback.
Yeah.
We had to go to Saddleback, and we had to ride Saddleback until I figured it out.
Yeah.
And so we would get up on Saturdays and drive all the way down to Saddleback on the Saturday Saddlebacks, which were probably the best.
How long a ride was it?
Races.
How long a ride would that be for you?
That drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably a couple hours.
That's yeah. And then you got to race all day.
It was a couple hours. It was down through LA and then, off the other side in Orange County. So, and then I was up here in Ventura, up on the beach. So,
yep.
So it was quite a drive. But, lo and behold, I kind of figured it out. I didn't like it, but if you were gonna be getting noticed in the sport, you had to ride Saddleback, and you had to do good. And so, one good thing about Saddleback too is all the factories went there. So you'd show up on a Saturday, and Jeff Ward would be there.
Yes.
Or Go Brecker was there.
And you wanted that competition because it's going to.
Brock was there. Mike Bell was there.
Right.
All those guys were there. So what? I was always in the Yamaha program, so I was always feeding my results to Yamaha. I would send them my results.
Yep.
And that was part of the support program they had. So I was always feeding. So every time I had an opportunity to maybe say a Jeff Ward showed up, well, maybe I could beat him, in a moto, or maybe I could, run with him or whatever and show Yamaha that.
Right.
I wanted to be a factory rider. So it was a great place to, and then they would always make us the first race. So, and the races were long. They'd be like 40 minute motos. And we'd be the first race. So you're on the gate at 9:00, riding your first moto. The track is totally bitching, totally moist, totally groomed.
Yep.
The second moto would dry out a little bit, but it was a short day.
Yeah.
And so Saturday Saddlebacks were cool.
And I would think to throw a hard pack track right in the middle like that too. I always found that the hard pack tracks, it didn't beat up your body quite as much, as the sandy, whooped out places. So So you'd be able to still be fresh.
But you had to develop the skill of riding on that hard stuff,
Oh,
throttle
yeah.
control.
Yep.
And riding the ruts that developed.
Yep.
And it was just a different surface, and I was kind of, like I said, I was the riverbed guy, so I was the sandy guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. That was my comfort. But then, lo and behold, the Saddleback National was my best national. I got a 4th overall.
I was going to say, that's the one you were running pretty strong in some of those motos.
Yeah, I got a 4th overall at Saddleback, which is my best. I think that was my best result in '83. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah.
I had to work for that.
Absolutely.
I wasn't a hard pack guy. I was a sand guy. So.
It took a lot of work.
So that's kind of cool that became that I was able to do that.
That's
and then
awesome.
we would ride Carlsbad too. That was a real long drive because that was down North San Diego. That way.
Yep.
So that was a real long drive. But I rode Carlsbad quite a bit too. And it was kind of the same deal, a little bit more hilly.
Yeah.
But
we were out that way a couple years ago for the Red Bull Straight Rhythm, and I think 19, and I kind of took a tour. That was the first time I had ever been to Southern California, other than a business meeting, which I never got away from the airport.
When you did that. Yeah.
But just touring the tracks down there was it's a whole different world. It's
not like out here.
Granted, even being 55, I keep saying one of the things on my bucket list is to get out there and rent a bike and go to a couple different places and just play around. But
yeah,
it blows me away. It's still, California is still just amazing place to see for the motocross world.
It is. It's kind of where everybody's at.
Mm-hmm.
It's everybody complains about the traffic and everything, but it's still it's always the number one place. Anaheim's the biggest race of the year.
Yep.
And LA is still the place.
Yep. Yep.
Still the place. You want to perform in LA.
You got to be there. You got all the factories are right around there for the most part.
Exactly.
Pro Circuit, we got to go over to Pro Circuit and see the shop. That was really cool. But but everybody's there.
Mitch Payton was a staple at Saturday Saddlebacks. He would have Troy Lee. Troy Lee, I would race with Troy Lee. Andy Jefferson.
Yep.
Mitch was there. Tuning bikes and they were riding Huskies. Mickey Diamond. I would race with Mickey. Mickey rode a Mako.
Yeah.
He rode a Mako 490.
Oh my gosh.
And before he was Honda Mickey,
he was Husky Mickey.
He
right?
was Mako Mickey.
Mako Mickey too.
He was Mako Mickey. In fact, Mickey rode the Nationals the year '83. He was riding that series.
Wow.
Yeah, he was finishing a little bit behind me.
Yeah.
But I would dice with him a little bit, But Mickey became Mickey when he got that Honda ride.
Yeah.
I think that was like
86, I think. 87, maybe.
Yeah. And then he won those championships.
Yep.
But, yeah, Mickey was a Mako saddleback, just cruising around,
Yep.
And Troy Lee, same thing. Troy Lee was, just a racer that. So all those guys were Saturday Saddleback, and it was just where you had to go to be seen.
That is so cool.
You could go win a big race at Indian Dunes, but it wasn't the same as winning at Saddleback. Against the big boys.
It depends on the eyes that are watching and who else is there.
I remember when Bob Hanna was at Saddleback, he parked right next to us, and he was on a Husky.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's on Husqvarna. I think they just had a picture in Facebook. He was number 6H.
Yes.
He kind of had a full coverage bell. Kind of had a funky helmet.
Yep.
But it was Bob, and he rode a Husqvarna.
I remember reading that.
Yeah. There's a picture out right now. I just saw it, but it reminded me because he was parked right next to us in the pits, and we kind of knew he was special, but he was like, I think he was Robert Hanna then. He was Robert. He wasn't the Hurricane yet, so he was Robert Hanna, 6H. I think it was Steve Hurd Husky, and I think I saw a podcast with him, and he talked about saving like $1,800 or something, and he went and bought that Husky.
Oh man!
And then rode the scene, rode Saddleback and rode Indian Dunes. I think his first race was Indian Dunes.
That's cool.
But Bob had ridden in the desert his whole life.
Yep.
And so he was ready. When he hit the track, he was ready to go. So he rose to the top, very
quick.
Yeah. I think he rode a novice race, intermediate, and I think he rode a second, third race was like he moved to pro.
That's awesome.
Like he was that fast. It took me years to get.
Yeah.
It took me years to get to pro, and it took him 3 weeks.
I could sympathize. I could sympathize.
It took me 3 years.
It took me three and a half years before I could get to that level where I could get a pro license.
I think that's about normal.
But then we had guys like John Dowd that came through, and he rode like 3 races as a novice. He won maybe a dozen as an amateur, and then by the end of the year he's finishing in the top of the expert class already. And it's like, hey,
those guys are special. Those guys are special. Yeah. I mean, I rode around in the 125 beginner class. I was getting lapped. For a year straight. I don't know why my dad would keep going, because I was so terrified. I was just scared to death, and I would get lapped, and I remember it was 3 motos, and oh my God, it took, but if you keep going and you keep at it,
perseverance.
If you got a little bit of talent, it'll eventually
come out. Yep. Perseverance pays off.
Also, one thing that slowed me down in my career is I broke my leg like 4 or 5 times. I did the tip fib thing.
Yeah.
And then I did that. So that killed me too. I would do the tip fib, and that was back when they didn't really plate you. They just let it heal.
Yeah, so it's crooked. So the
tip fib is so far from your heart. It takes a long time for that to really get. And then I would get antsy and go out, and then I would re-break it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would re-break the tip fib. And so then I would be out another 6 months or whatever, and so that was a big bummer.
It didn't take much too, because the suspension on the bikes and stuff was tough. It was tough.
I would bottom. I remember we would build the foot pegs up.
Yep.
To try to get my feet up off the ground.
Yeah.
Because I would bottom when you would bottom that suspension, which we all did, so soft that your feet would catch in the ruts.
You could break ankles, heels.
Yeah, and it would catch your toe, and then something would give, and I would break that bone, and so that was That was a bummer.
And that's not exactly one that you can say, well, nobody read the X-ray, so I'm going to race. You know, I mean, some guys have tried, but it doesn't usually work out too good when you break the 10th fib.
Yeah. I wish they were plating and stuff back then, because I would have plated and been right back at it, you know, and had that strength.
Yep.
But then we rode I think I used the Scott boots, you know, because those were kind of going at that time.
We actually have a picture that we're rotating through that shows you in the Scott boots, and it looks like you might even have an iron jaw type of mouthpiece on your helmet too.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I wore the Scotts because I thought that would give me a little bit more protection with the lower leg problem that I had.
Yep.
So I rode I wore those, but then Hannah made those popular.
Yes.
He was wearing them.
Yep.
And they were pretty cool back in the day.
Yep, I had a pair.
They had the little slippers that went in, and they were kind of ahead of their time.
It was the ski boot of motocross.
What's that?
The ski boot of motocross.
Yeah, ski boot. Yeah.
It used a lot of the same.
We would trim that top part off. That top part kind of was too long, so we would trim that top off. I remember.
I remember that. It was long enough that it would almost dig into the bottom of your knee.
Yes. So you would trim that. I think it was like 3 inches. You would trim off.
Yep, and it was only there to have the Scott emblem on it on the top of the boot.
Right.
It was like, this is not.
Yeah, you trim it just above the Scott emblem because you didn't want to screw that up. You wanted that to look good.
It's not like it is now though, where you have like, you know, everybody has their logos and emblems. I say that, and I got my iPads in front of me on the camera, and I got half a dozen logos and stickers on it, you know. But it is what it is.
Yeah, stickers were a big deal back then.
Oh yeah, stickers were fantastic. I mean, some of the
we
stuff
loved our stickers. Yeah, remember the Bell Ray stickers?
I remember the Bell Ray stickers. They were
those were
awesome.
Bell Ray stickers were the best.
Even some of like the old spark plug stickers and stuff like that.
They were NGK or Champion.
Yep.
Yeah, all those stickers were cool, and whatever Hannah. I pretty much followed Hannah because that was where I wanted to get to. So like, I would just follow. I would hear what he was up to, and I'd hear he would run 10 miles a day, in the desert.
Yeah.
So then
I
started
run.
running. I started that.
Yep.
And and then I would see at the end of races I would be much stronger than the guys I was racing against. So I'm like, man, this is good. So I was really into training. I really got into training early.
Hannah was such an awesome dude, though. I got to talk to him a little bit when we had a race out. When we had the Celtic National out here, it was like '88. My first national was '88. The week before, they had this invitational race, and Hannah and the Suzuki team showed up, and Hannah was, he was kind of like, he's at the races and he's all business. You're at a local race. Don't bother me. I just want to race. He was cutting through my pit to get down to the starting area. And my dad, who happened to be into airplanes at the time, he knew Bob was into airplanes. And he says, like, he turned around and says, "Hey, Bob, how's that Piper Cub?" And Bob just like stopped and turned around. And 45 minutes later, they're still talking airplanes. Nice. And we almost missed our moto, because me and him were in the same moto.
If you were smart, you wouldn't have said nothing to snuck down and be like, "You keep talking airplanes."
Yeah, he loves them airplanes.
But I know what you mean. It's so cool to see some of those guys and to try to, if they're doing it, then you want to do it because you want to start performing.
Yeah, I mean, I studied the magazines. I just studied the magazines, and you would look up to those guys because they would have those national pictures in there, and Supercross, and I would just stare at those pictures.
Yep.
And then I would try to emulate, what I saw, what I thought looked cool.
Yep.
And Hannah always looked so cool,
He did. And Magoo.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Magoo with the duckbill visor and the vents in it and stuff. That was super cool. We actually got a picture of you in front of Magoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to race with Danny that year, '83. He rode. He had the factory Honda.
Yep.
And that was fun. That was fun because what an amazing guy.
He was the wild child.
Yep. Yeah. I rode Hangtown, and it was just a mudder.
No.
And I was really struggling for some reason. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was my first national on the team.
Yeah.
But I was way back, and Danny passed me, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how fast. I mean, it was so treacherous. The mud and the ruts. It was so bad, and I was doing everything I could just to keep it up. And he went by me so fast. And he was skimming, instead of going straight line,
yep,
he was going diagonal, and he was going 60 miles an hour on that 500 on the RC.
Yep.
And he was going diagonal, and he was just skimming the top of the ruts.
Oh.
I still have that image in my head, and I couldn't believe it. And he wasn't riding through the ruts like we all were.
Yeah.
He was diagonally skimming them. And he was going, just going 50, 60 miles an hour. I couldn't believe it.
And in a mud race, too, you got, like those guys. Most of the time in a mud race, it's not very loud because everybody's either on or off the throttle or they're chopping a little bit. But I can only imagine that, like, Danny, you just hear the brake wide open, all the time coming across, and you see him going that fast.
He was trying to steal the nickname. He was trying to get the Locomotive nickname.
Well, the thing about racing with Danny, and that was back when the Magoo Double and all that stuff at Saddleback.
Yeah, yeah.
So what he would do at every track that we would go to on the national circuit, he would try to find some gap.
And double
he would
it?
try to find some crazy gap that he could clear. So I hated it because it would put pressure on me and everybody else, because it says, well, Danny did it. So now there was this thing where, you have to do it now. So Danny was always trying to find some crazy gap at each national to clear. And so it was gnarly.
I can only
race with this guy, because if Danny did it, then it could put pressure on the rest of us.
You're like, I got to get together with a bunch of the guys, and we got to go to his box van and have a chat.
Exactly. But I think he liked that Magoo Double. I think he liked how that worked out for him. So he got into that mode, of just.
That was actually one of the first, if I remember correctly, one of the first real big publicly photographed doubles in the U.S.
It kind of was. Yeah, it kind of was. I remember in practice and sitting up on the hill, and just kind of psyching up for it.
Yep.
And it was formed so bad. It didn't have we didn't really have double jumps.
They didn't know how to form them.
But the landing was so treacherous. If it would have been a normal double by today's standards, it would have been a piece of cake. It wasn't that big a deal, really, but it was kind of going uphill.
Yes.
But the landing was so gnarly and it had such a razor edge to it that you really had to be precise and really land it, just right.
Yep.
Because they just didn't take a lot of time to form things real nice back in the day.
No, I mean most everybody they built stuff backwards.
We weren't advanced with our track building at that time.
A lot of times too, I don't know about out there, but a lot of times out here, they didn't even bulldoze some of that stuff. They just, if there was a jump there, we cleaned up to it, and then we cleaned it maybe after it, but we didn't really do much to the jump.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's Carlsbad.
Yeah.
Carlsbad, same thing. There were parts they prepped.
Mm-hmm.
There were parts they kind of dug up.
Yep.
In water, but there were parts that hadn't been dug up in 10 years.
That's so cool.
It was baked. It was baked, and then they would throw water on it, and it would just be grease.
I remember seeing pictures in the magazines of Carlsbad, and of course it was like the Blue Groove, And it was like you would go to the race that morning in like a track walk and see Blue Groove because it never was, that you couldn't really clean it out.
Yeah, but the thing about Carlsbad is there would be dust and dry in some areas.
Yes.
In the morning.
Yep.
And then there would be mud holes in other places. They were inconsistent. It wasn't consistent. There was dry dust on one part of the track, and then mud in the other parts of the track. It was overwatered.
Yeah.
It was the most inconsistent. I mean, it was just there was no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm glad to see that it wasn't just out here that they did that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Carlsbad, of all places, right? You'd think it would be dialed in, but no, not back in the day.
Yeah, because I mean that was the ABC's Wide World of Sports. It was always Carlsbad. It was never anywhere else. It was always Carlsbad. So.
But I remember in practice, I rode the '83 USGP there, and I was in practice, and I was starting to go up the uphill, and it was so slimy that I just kind of slid out.
Yeah.
I did a donut, and I remember the fans were going crazy, and I'd never ridden in front of that many people before.
Yeah.
So I did this little donut, and I fell down, and the people were going nuts. They were just into, they were excited because it was practice. It was the morning.
Yep.
And I did this little thing. It wasn't that bad, but it was so greasy and muddy. But I always remember the fans were just, man, they were just having a good old time watching me fall down.
Yeah. and you know what? They didn't, granted, yes, they did have tires for different types of terrain back then, but they were nothing like what these guys have for all the dialed in tires now. It's crazy.
No.
It is
we
crazy.
I think we had the Bridgestone M22. That was for the dry stuff.
Yep.
That one. And then I think we had the Metz. We had the Metzlers up front. In the early days.
Yep.
But
it was definitely it was an interesting time to be riding. But I mean, you know what? You didn't know any better back then. It wasn't like you had that option that these guys now they know. It's definitely different.
No, we thought we had the coolest stuff at the time. I mean,
absolutely.
We didn't know we did have the best stuff.
Yep.
We had the best. We had the best bikes, the best helmets, the best gear, the best boots.
For sure.
We had all of the best at that time. So we were. We were stoked.
So Tim, I got to ask. So back in '83, full factory rider. So what was the pay like? What were you just like rolling in cash? I mean, how were you doing back then?
I did pretty good, but I didn't get a salary because I was a support guy.
Okay.
So I didn't get a salary, but I had a bonus. I had a bonus program. It was all. I got paid on my results.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And I did pretty good. I made the most money I ever made. I don't know how much I made, but I was finally doing good. And then you get per diem. So when you were out on the road, I would fill out these expense reports. When I get back home.
Yep.
And then I would make another, whatever, depending on how many days I was on the road.
Yeah.
And I remember getting checks on that, and then I get my bonuses. And
that's
cool. I didn't make huge money, but at least I was making decent money.
Yeah, you were enough to do it full time for how many years? 4 or 5 years full time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, my total career was 10 years. I started in '73 and I finished up in '83. So my full racing career, from beginner to pro was 10 years. So,
but still, you were out there. You were doing what you wanted to do, and you were young and living the moto dream, really.
The California lifestyle.
I mean, that was my dream to become a Yamaha factory rider. That was my whole dream the whole time. So I did it.
You did it, yeah.
I had Osterman, the guy with all kinds of experience, and my bike was so perfect every time I got on it, because he's a perfectionist.
Oh, he is. I mean,
he's a perfectionist.
Just look at what he went on to do in his career, Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would have a brand new fender, seat, tank. I mean, he didn't. I mean, every week the bike would be just sparkling.
Oh yeah.
Just sparkling, and
that was back in the days where they had to drive box vans across the country and still find times to build these bikes, here and there at the tracks. It wasn't like
exactly.
It wasn't like
at the hotels.
Yeah,
they'd get the hotel and they'd work at the hotels on the bike all week, and then you'd fly in at the last second.
You look at the mechanics now, and they still bust their butts. But I talked to some of them, and when Unadilla comes around, we always stay near the hotel where the factory teams are, and I see them taking engines out and putting them in like the shipping containers to get to the closest UPS to send them back to. But that didn't. I mean, you guys, Dave was building the motors right there.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, Dave what a great mechanic. I never had any problems with my bike. My bike never broke. It couldn't. Everything was brand new. I mean, he replaced everything every week. It would just be unbelievable. I'd get on this bike and it was just like sitting on a brand new motorcycle. I was just like, I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable.
And especially at your level, things like frames stretched out in a weekend.
Yeah.
In a weekend, they stretched. Where it take the normal guys like me, it would take me, half of a season to even wear the frame down like that. But you do it in a weekend.
Yeah, and then I had access to Stig Peterson from Olean. Stig was a European. I saw that he just passed away.
Oh, no kidding.
Stig, I think he had a brother that rode GPs. I think Stig even rode GPs.
Yeah.
But Stig would come up to my house up here, and, I mean, there's no amount of time. We could spend days, days working on my shock, and we would go out to some of these rough practice tracks that I would have around here.
Right.
And we would spend days and hours and just dialing in my suspension. And he would Yamaha would make sure that everything was perfect.
Yep.
And that would make such a big difference getting my bike dialed. I mean, such a big difference when you get on a team.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Such a huge difference. I mean, it just makes a huge difference. I got to finally, experience that. It was like
that's
it just puts you on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And then you're just your confidence soars because now you're around, you're hanging out with Brock, and Mike Bell, and Warren Reed, and Cantaloupe, and these are your buddies, and you're riding with these guys, and then you're riding with these guys, and you're like going, hell, I ride just like these guys. Like your confidence.
You belong there.
Yeah, you read about them in Cycle News, and you're like, wow, these guys. But then all of a sudden they're your buddies, and you're hanging out with, you're practicing with them, and they're doing lap times, and you're like going, wow, I'm part of the team now. I'm just as good as these guys. And it just makes your confidence just. And that's why I was so ready for that season after Anaheim. I was just so ready to get after it, and then I had that injury.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the bummer part of it. But I hung on and got the Rookie of the Year. So
that's cool.
I'm happy.
That's awesome. But before
no regrets.
So before I let you go, and you mentioned Anaheim, and I just wanted to well, you had ridden Carlsbad in that GP, and that was the biggest crowd that you said you'd ever run in. What was now? I don't know if because I experienced a little bit when I got to ride a Foxborough Supercross, and I made the night show, but I never made the main. Riding down out of the tunnel into a lighted stadium and seeing thousands and thousands of people, that's got to be like one of the highlights. For most people.
I can tell you right now, I passed Steve Martin. Steve Martin from Florida?
Steve Martin was practiced up my area once.
I made a last lap pass on Steve Martin to make that main at Anaheim.
Yep.
I will never forget. The whole stadium was watching me.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to make this pass. It was through the whoops, and I had all this drive, but I knew the whole stadium was watching me because I could hear the roar.
Yeah.
I could hear them building.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I needed that spot, and so all the fans were watching that.
Yep.
And I'll never forget the feeling that I got from the fans and the crowd.
You just hear it.
The roar.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is so incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the rush is just, it's otherworldly.
It's so cool.
It's unbelievable. I'm so glad that I got to experience that.
I had never gotten anything like that, but I'll tell you, just that, like, the awe of only a handful of people ever get to experience riding down into a stadium like that and riding in front of that many people under the lights like that is just to do it to the level that you did it and make that pass and hear those people. That's just unbelievable.
It is. I'm telling you, I can still remember that vividly.
Sends shivers up your spine.
One of my greatest moments of just riding in front of that many people, because motocross, you're not riding. You don't get that kind of a crowd. The USGP at Carlsbad, you got it.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like a stadium, and I experienced that. Fully.
That's so cool. That is so cool. It's something that all these years later, it still sends shivers, I bet, up your spine when you think about it.
It does. I can remember it. I can remember my thoughts, and I can remember the crowd building.
Yep.
As they saw me, they knew that I needed that position.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started to make my move, I heard them building.
That's
and
so
I was
cool.
just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And you know what? When they say the crowd pushes, athletes.
Oh.
I think they did. They pushed me past him. I think the energy that I felt from them.
Yep.
Helped me make that move.
That's so cool.
Helped me execute it in some sort of a weird way, but it really it's real.
Yeah, you feed on it. You feed on the energy that's circulate. I would say the energy that's coming your way, but it's just the whole energy of the whole situation right there. So that is so cool.
Like it. Yeah.
So definitely.
Let's see what else.
Well, I see you play a lot of golf now.
Yeah.
I see you play a lot of golf now, because that's one thing. Like we started following each other on Instagram, and every time I see you post in the morning, and I'm like, damn it, I'm sitting at my desk at work, and Tim's out somewhere where it's beautiful sunshine, ready to hit some golf balls.
It's kind of how I start my day. I go down and I have a buddy that gives me the long deal at the course.
Yep.
And I just love to play golf. I've always been a stick and ball guy.
Yep.
I'm as far as a moto guy, it was kind of more my dad. My dad was more of the motors and cars and stuff. I've always been a stick and ball guy. I was a basketball player.
Yeah.
So I've always had the eye-hand coordination. I've always liked those kind of sports.
Yeah.
So even back when we were racing, we took up golf. I was good friends with Johnny O. Yeah. And we would train together, and part of our training during the day was to go play 9 holes at the par 3. And so we started playing golf back then, back during our racing days. And so it's just kind of grown for me. I don't really think Johnny plays anymore.
With him, you never know, because you see him with the Lawrence brothers, and they both play all the time. So
right, I don't know if Johnny gets out there with Jet and Hunter.
They probably don't want him to, because they can't goof around if he's there.
Well, he'll make them feel bad because they're playing golf and enjoying themselves. And he's probably like, you guys need to be training.
Yeah, you guys have responsibilities. Yeah.
But let me tell you a story about Johnny. Me and him we came up at Indian Dunes together, so we became become good friends with all your guys you race against, right?
Oh yeah.
Jim Hawley was one of them. Willie Simons.
Yep.
There was Bobby Jones, Mike Brown.
Yep.
The Flying Mike Brown.
The Flying Mike Brown. The first one.
Mike Brown. Yeah. All those guys were Indian Dunes guys. But Johnny, he rode the 100 class, and I was the 125 pro guy, and I was winning. I was doing pretty good, and he was on a 100. Suzuki used to make a 100. It was a cool little bike, and they had a 100 class.
Yep.
But there was this thing about Johnny. There was like, well, he's going to start riding 125. So I kind of had my eye, corner of my eye. I would kind of keep an eye on this Johnny guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't Johnny. He was John.
Yeah.
They called him John O'Mara.
Yeah.
Back in the early days, he wasn't Osho. He was John O'Mara. But he finally moved up to the 125s, and we would start racing. He would hole shot. He was pretty light, and I was heavier.
Yeah.
And so he would always get the hole shot and take off, and then I would reel him in and catch him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I would beat him. And so we became friends, and he would come up to my house, and I would get up, and I would say, "Hey, Johnny, I'm going to go for my run now." Because I was back, because I was taken after the hurricane.
Yep.
My run,
10 miles, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would do a 5-mile loop, and I would say, "Hey, Johnny, I'm going to go for the run. You want to run? You want to go with me?" And he'd say, "No, I'm good. I'm good." The early Johnny didn't want to train. I know that's hard to believe, because he's known as the trainer, right?
Yeah, but you know what though?
He's known as the guy.
What changed for him though? Was it the same type of thing that, like you said, when you see guys like Hannah, it's like, oh my God, if he's doing it, I'm going to have to start, you know?
Well, he just saw that, well, he's a good sprinter.
Yep.
He takes off, and he gets the whole shot, and he sprints good, but guys like me would catch him.
Yep.
So he's like, well, wait a second, there's got to be something to this training thing, because I'm pooping out at the end, and Locey is strong.
Yeah.
He's strong, and he catches me.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but I always tell that story because Johnny, he didn't want any part of training. You know, it was like
now look at him.
I had my whole program. You know, we would make our own programs, but I had my program and I would do it faithfully every single day.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get him to do it. But eventually we became training partners when he got his Honda contract. He bought a big house out in Simi Valley. Yep. So that was only about 25, 30 minutes away from me. And so we would train together. And so we would run and ride and just train throughout the day, doing all kinds of different things.
That's cool.
But we would run the bridle path. He lived in a bridle path neighborhood. We would run these sandy bridle path hills in the heat. And we became, we would push each other, you know, to train. And by that time, he was fully into it.
Yep.
We had training logs that we would keep our times and our distances, and then we would go out and we would try to burn at least a tank of gas a day on our practice tracks that we had, and we would do that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So before,
I golf. I'm kind of a hiker.
Yeah.
I do the hiking thing. I like to go to the national parks, and I like to go to all those pretty places. And
yep.
I like taking pictures.
Well, I
see that.
I see
I've
you.
been retired from UPS now for about 6-7 years.
That's super cool.
I retired at 55. So.
I'm jealous. I'm 55 now. I try to get my wife to let me retire, but she says no.
So it's
all right,
time.
so Tim, I got to ask. So you deliver for UPS?
It's time to play golf.
It's time to play golf.
To play golf.
Yes.
So Tim, you deliver for UPS?
I was a package car driver.
So now, did anybody ever identify you on your deliveries and say, "Wait a minute, you're that"?
No, I don't think so. No, I was just a good old UPS guy by that time. I don't really think.
I have a free coffee from this show. I feel like I'm one up on Tim.
We're just a couple of average guys, and Dave gets free coffee.
I do.
He gets recognized, and I'm like, geez, I'm the guy that started the group.
I know. We started the show together.
We did. But no, that's nice. Cool. That is cool.
Yeah, so I got my Teamster pension, and I'm set, so I'm good. So I just
that's awesome.
Yeah, I just take care of my lab and I play golf.
I see you go see the grandkids once in a while.
Got the grandkids. Got another one on the way.
Oh, congratulations!
That's cool.
A little boy's on the way in May.
Nice, congratulations!
Sounds like a dirt bike in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of just do that and.
Enjoy life.
Yeah, just kind of enjoying my time not working and going through that whole thing.
So before I let you go, I can't let you go without getting your take on the Supercross series.
Okay.
What do you? I mean, I definitely see. You know, with Sexton coming up, the changing of the guards, the different formats of, Triple Crown and stuff, Supercross is kind of evolving. It's almost like it's starting to go through a change where we're starting to see the young come back and some of the formats changing. What do you think about how everything, is going, really?
I think it's going good. I like, and I catch flack a little bit, but I like the Triple Crown. I'm a believer that I think every race should be Triple Crown. I get stoked on Triple Crown nights. It's just so exciting. There's 6 motos. Yep. And you're engaged in every one of them. Mm-hmm. And I just think I know the old guard. In fact, Osterman was hammering me on Facebook.
I saw.
Yeah, he was hammering me because I said that I missed the Triple Crown, and I think he looks at it from a mechanic's eye.
Yeah. Well, those guys are busier than hell the whole night.
Yeah, where it just makes the mechanics so freaking busy.
Especially if you crush a gas tank like Sexton's got crushed that week.
Especially if your guy goes down, he tweaks his bars and breaks a fender or whatever.
Yep.
And like now so I think he looks at it from that, and I think, which is one view.
Well, it's weird because I see it. I'm kind of with you. I like the format, and I think it lets a guy like Kenny have consistency, and it takes it takes what we're just saying. You got to finish every race.
Right.
You have to think about a point standpoint in a Supercross race at a night.
Yeah. I just think the 3 moto tally, when you tally it up, the consistency, I just think your consistency is valued in that format, and even if you get a 7th, you can come back and go 7-1-1 and still have a great night and get on the podium.
Yeah.
Where the other way, if you crash, it's kind of, your night's over. You're kind of done. So I like that part.
Yeah.
Now I think Eli is just incredible. I think we're watching a guy that is just.
It's amazing.
He's figured it out. He's matured. He's older. He just looks happier. Like I say, the team is everything.
Absolutely.
And he's on it. I think he was really struggling at Cowie. I think he just wasn't. I just think he wasn't happy, and I think he's just so happy now. I think he's got that one guy that on his team now that
he kind of
helps him.
Yeah, he
and
gets
so
it.
He's
He
got
gets
him
what
on the team, and you're just watching a guy with so much experience and skill.
Mm-hmm.
And that 23 Yamaha is so good.
Oh yeah.
And you're just he's must watch TV. I mean, you just can't miss this guy. He's so impressive.
Yep, it's almost like he's
impressive.
Almost a machine of sorts when you're watching the race. The way that he attacks everything and he's consistent.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's so cool to see because, back in the day, he would have been 26, 27. He would have been, he would have been retired, right?
Yeah, he would have been done.
But now we're watching this evolution. This guy, 30 years old,
and
it's incredible to watch.
You look at some of the other guys around though that are racing. Kenny's up there, Even guys like Cooper Webber, they're getting up there. They would have been retired had it been.
Right.
Back in the early 80s. They would have been retired, I mean, granted, you would see a guy like Chase come on board. Chase is in his early 20s as the youth coming on board, where back when you were running, it was a guy like Ronnie at 16 years old coming in and winning the Orlando Supercross at 16 years old in the Premier class. That's the young guy that we want, It's like the young guy's in his 20s.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that might have to do with the fact that the teams are starting to get these riders from a real young age, like Hayden Deegan, and the 250s are now just a support class for the most part, as opposed to bringing the guys into the Premier class at a little bit older age.
It was so incredible to see Hayden get that 4th. He had such a bad week at Anaheim.
Yeah.
Just kind of had a funky deal,
Yeah.
And a week later, he just goes, you know what, I'm going pro, and he just changed the whole program, you know, and got that 4th, and now he's got confidence. Now he's probably thinking, you know what, I can get on that podium,
Absolutely.
I could do it. I think I could do it. A week ago he was like, I don't even know if I could win the futures class, and now he's flipped the whole script. And so I'm a big Deegan guy.
He definitely
his corner speed looks incredible. I was telling Jim before the show. I haven't seen a big corner that fast in a 250. I think ever.
Yep. So, but I mean, you look at it.
That's what Carmichael was saying that on Pulp the other night. Do you see that?
Yeah.
He was saying this younger generation, the corner speed.
It's ridiculous.
He says that's what they do. Kind of Chase is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Chase just rails those corners, and Hayden's probably next level, because he's so young.
Yeah.
Where they come in, they just rail those ruts.
It's like Bubba perfected the scrub. This next generation saying, "Screw that, we're going to turn at 900 miles an hour."
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think
it's incredible how fast they railed, how fast Hayden was going through his corners. But I really think the guy to watch is Jet.
Yeah.
I think Jet. He to me is the greatest athlete I've ever seen on a motocross bike.
Mm.
I watch his athleticism. I watch when he tumbles, and
Yep.
I watch how he kind of rolls and he springs to his feet. I just watch how athletic he is.
Yeah.
You know, I watch his golf swing. I watch all that stuff that he does, and I'm just like, this guy.
He's got it together.
This guy is the first athlete. Like, it's kind of like Dustin Johnson in golf.
Yeah.
They were saying that Dustin is the first like athlete to play golf.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I think Jet is the first athlete like that, high caliber athlete
Mhm.
that's on a motocross bike.
He's so smooth. I mean, and it's like you could try to compare his style and like, you know, put him in classification, say he's got a little bit of Bailey, he's got a little bit of RJ, he's got a little bit of everybody, but he's Jet. He's different.
He's Jet.
I agree with you 100%. He's different.
He's another level. He's
Absolutely.
another level, a level that we've never seen. And wait till he gets on that 450.
Oh.
He's just when he's flowing around that track and he has that power.
We saw
It's going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible.
We saw what he did at the Donations in Redbud on that 450, and he passed Chase and pulled away from him. And you know, it's like in a guy in Chase's position at the time, we didn't know anything about Chase's contracts or anything like that, but in a guy in his position to have his teammate who's on the, you know, supposed to be up and coming pass you like that, it had to go up him sideways and know that he has to work really, really hard now.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm just amazed by the kid. He's man, he is something. He is something. I mean, Hayden's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah.
And he's gonna win. But you know, this older guard, as soon as they kind of retire, you know, Jet's gonna be everything. He's gonna be a rock star.
Absolutely.
He's gonna be huge.
With the way social media is and the way that how good he is at it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's.
Yeah, I could see where he's starting. He's kind of dealing with his fame a little bit.
Yep.
And it's kind of annoying him. Mm-hmm. I was listening to some stuff, and he was like, "Well, why aren't you interviewing that guy? He's the guy that you should be interviewing. He did better than me. Why you?" But it's like, dude, the TV wants your face on the TV. They want to see Jet. They want to talk to Jet. They don't want to talk to RJ. They don't want to talk to. They want to see.
They
Jet.
want to see Jet. Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, even
he's got the charisma. He's got it. He's got everything.
Oh yeah.
So I'm all in on Jet.
Yep. Absolutely.
But for the meantime, Eli's king.
He is. King. There's no disputing that. That's
he's king.
I think this summer we're going to start to see the outdoor nationals and see where it goes, and we're going to see the
new format too, though. So
with the super motocross.
Supermoto.
I was also watching something with Chase. I guess they figured out some things on the frame. They're using some new frame specs.
Yep.
And I've started to notice recently that his bike was definitely working better, and he was getting more confident. So I don't think it's over with Chase. I don't think I'm going to give up on Chase. I think
I'm definitely not giving up on Chase. I think right now Chase's worst enemy is Chase.
Yeah.
You know,
I think when that bike gets better, and I think he's on that path because I can already see it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to beat Eli. I think he's going to be able to beat him. I don't know if he can do it. Do the championship.
I think with him, too, right up until this point in time, if Chase was leading and Eli passed Chase, it was in his head. You know, Eli was renting space in Chase's head, but now Chase is starting to get some more of that confidence in that heat race this last weekend. He passed him and gapped him. Yeah,
it's starting to flip a little bit. So I could see Chase. You know, and the only thing that screwed up Chase was that sand. He didn't go to the outside like Eli.
Yes.
It was kind of like, I think Christian Craig was making the same error. He was going on the inside. You know, sand, you gotta keep your speed. You guys know sand, right?
It's all momentum.
it's all about speed.
Yep.
So you always want to take the fast. You can't dig in, and so Eli figured out that outside, and Chase never really did. He never really figured it out. And I think that was the difference,
Yep, especially on bikes that powerful. Like you said, sand is about speed. So it's like what a lot of guys don't realize is it's not about going as hard as you can through it. You got to carry as much speed as you can and still finesse the throttle so that you don't dig in, and that's how you carry the speed through sand. Yeah, and these bikes are so powerful that one tweak of the throttle, they just bury themselves no matter how fast they're going.
I mean, my sand experience, I learned that, that speed is the thing. You can't downshift and dig in.
No.
And you gotta stand on the pegs. You gotta get back, and that's what Eli was doing.
Yep.
He was just hitting that outside, getting back.
Yep.
And just wailing.
Absolutely.
And so. Yeah,
very cool, man.
I'm looking forward to Tampa. I'm looking forward to maybe Hayden getting on the podium.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Week, yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be cool. I think maybe being down there in Florida and being on some of that soil that he's used to.
Yep.
Maybe, but
we're in for a good series anyway. As long as they stay healthy, we are in for a great series, I think.
Agreed.
We are.
Agreed.
Cool.
We are.
Well, I really do appreciate you coming on with us and talking, getting to hear some of the stories of the Southern California scene and how you came up.
Tim, you set a record. You're our longest phone guest ever. Yes, you are.
Fun. I was nervous at the beginning, but just talking about the old stories and I study the sport still,
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
clearly, you're still in touch with it, which is great.
Just like you guys, I'm into it, and
I think the biggest thing too is when you're talking to people. I mean, we have that common bond with motocross, so it's almost like we remember something in the same era. All of a sudden, the conversation flows, and it's just easy.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and Tim, we appreciate you being part of the group and interacting too. Or commenting before you jumped on the call that you're a frequent poster and an interactor. It's great that you these West Coast guys are getting more and more involved with our small East Coast group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah.
We try to keep it monitored and keep some of the craziness out, but every once in a while craziness is fun.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Like last week's show. I don't know if you saw last week's show, but we got hijacked.
Yeah, we had a couple buddies hijack us the last show we did.
Oh, you did? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, no.
You should go back and see the last show. Yeah,
we
went to go. We hit the live button, and next thing you know, we had to pound up the front door, and they literally hijacked the show.
It was fun.
Yep.
Oh. But anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. We'll definitely have it on, and we will stay in touch. If I ever get out to Cal, you'll kick my ass playing golf, but I'll come out there and play a little bit. So maybe when my wife lets me retire, I'm going to work on her.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell her, hey, Tim retired at 55.
She's going to say to me, you know what? You work in the car business. You don't have all the same perks that he has.
You don't have the pension, huh?
Nope. I get to drive nice cars on programs, but I don't have the pension.
You don't have the pension.
So,
oh, boy.
All right, man.
All right, guys.
Tim, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right. See you, Tim.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that was great.
Hopefully,
that was
I wasn't joking. I've been texting with Dan. Dan goes, "There's not enough time left. I got to cancel." He goes,
"No, that's fine. That's fine.
Totally
We
fine.
definitely got to get Dan on." And I know that Dan also he wanted to talk about, and I'll just say, hit the anniversary of his track.
Yep. He did text me. I'm not going to spill the beans, but he's got some cool stuff.
There's some big changes.
So
coming.
we'll get him a couple weeks out. I told him in 2 or 3 weeks roughly. We'll get Dan on. And we'll talk about MX23 and 2023. And
yeah,
what's going
absolutely.
On. So pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And I did confirm that we get to ride for free, which is good. So, yep. I said, listen, we'll plug you all you want, but us old guys, listen. I mean, gas is expensive. So, you get that gas card though. So.
Yeah, that wouldn't fly. But no, Tim was awesome. I love hearing some of the stories, and I was thinking about it today because I am 4 or 5 years younger than him. When he was in his pro career, that was when I was in a phase, like I was just starting to race. I was heavily into the magazines and reading, everything I could get. Southern California was the place to be.
It's funny because I remember as a kid watching Worldwide of Sports, and I remember Tim Locey's name, and I like popping up on the screen. And it's just cool, like here we are 40 years later. Yeah, like it's cool. Like you said, just it's the connection. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, and
Phil Benito's starting his shit. He just put up. He says, "Dave, I ride." Yes, I've been known to throw the leg over the bike and take it off the stand once in a while.
Phil, we're trying to get him to get his mountain bike.
Yes, so picking up an e-bike here in like 2 weeks. So So
we're gonna get a big. Well, you know what? We have to go back. I got to get you to go down to Pomfret, and we got to get everybody into like that area. It's got great ride arounds and stuff.
And your brother's starting crap. He says it's free for Dave to bring the 500 and put it on the stand. So it's a good thing I like these guys. So it's misery loves company.
Yep. Yep. And so for anybody who tuned in the middle of Tim, maybe missed it, you can always go back and watch it here on our page, The Last Lap.
Yep.
And I generally upload the footage to YouTube, and I will publish that and put a link out on my own when that's all edited up and ready to rock and roll.
Definitely, yeah. No, it's been good. It's been good putting the show back on the internet. So I know we took a pretty good hiatus.
Yep.
Kind of surprised that people still want to listen to you and I just kind of yap and
we might not have even done it unless we didn't get the peer pressure from some of those guys.
Peer pressure. I think we're borderline threatened.
I'm pretty sure we were.
Yeah, we were. So it's been fun. And I think the new format here, like we talked earlier today, I think the 2 or 3 weeks is kind of a better.
Yeah.
Let's just build a little more content, see what's going on in the group, see what's going on Supercross wise, kind of bundle the races together.
Supercross, motocross, that type of thing.
Exactly. So
I don't know how the numbers were this evening, but
it was like 20 consistently. I did the tag at everyone. I don't think it took because usually when I do that, it spikes up to like 60 or 70.
Yeah.
So Facebook might be broken tonight. So so it is.
It's okay.
So.
You know what? The shows afterwards, they're getting some
get
views.
Traction.
They're getting some views. So
yeah. Oh wait a minute, John Jacobite just said Dave Dale on my bike might be the new trailer queen of the stand. So the queen of the stand. So, yeah. So that's all right. Listen, we'll put them next to each other. We'll have nice and clean. So it'll be all right. So I can go to the track and bust balls just by walking around. So
absolutely, why not?
So, maybe I'll get a super soaker. And use that on the side of the track and just spray people as they go by.
Isn't that that's a thing now?
You know what?
That's a thing.
I got a better idea. Paintball gun. I'm getting a paintball gun.
Oh.
Yep, that's it. You know what? These guys keep talking shit.
Do you remember?
I'm gonna be the sniper up in the woods.
Do you remember the graphics of like the '90s?
Which fluorescent color you looking at?
The early '90s when they were like, how about the Suzuki when it came with like all the different splash colors on it?
Yes.
You're gonna
be like,
you're bringing it back, but you're doing it with a paint gun.
Yes.
A paintball.
Everyone's coming out of the woodwork now. We got Lee Carreras on, So. Yeah, it's where were you guys all earlier? You guys are all just getting out of bed now?
It's the normal.
The late crew.
The normal crowd that the cool guest is.
Yeah, Casey said he didn't see the notification either, so it's probably Facebook acting up. So when I did the ad, everyone didn't tag him either. So
too many people complained and they shut you down from using it.
No, I got a way around that.
You are the IT guy.
I will. Hey, what do you think of the new setup? So see, people can't see.
They can't see the new setup, but this is great.
Yeah, so we set up a 48-inch TV here on the opposite side of the camera, so we can actually see what's live broadcasting.
And believe it or not, I can read.
You can read the
comments.
Can
actually read the comments. I don't need these so much.
Oh wait, Lee Carreras says he came on late. He had to work. So isn't he like retirement age? He is, right? He's older than you, I think.
I'm 55. I'm retirement age. I'm ready to go.
This is true.
I'm going to go play golf with Tim.
Says, sniper on the stand. Oh boy, yeah. Bring it on, tough guy. Yep. So, careful. He better go investigate that frame. I can't believe you sold him a broken bike.
Jesus.
Oh boy.
So. Well, he did feel bad because he I'm going to just say it like he tipped over when we were riding, and he was just kind of like, oh my God, I hope I didn't break it. It's like, relax, it's fine.
That's awesome.
That bike's going to take a lot to break.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of it. I don't have anything else to add tonight. So it was on for an hour and 40 minutes. So.
It was a great show.
Yes.
I mean, Tim was awesome. He was
good.
awesome. I love hearing those stories. I love seeing the old pictures that you got up there.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Hopefully, you guys like the new format. I kind of we grabbed the. Whoops! I just pressed the wrong button. It says "Welcome to the show."
That's okay.
Yeah, it was kind of good rotating the pictures in and out. So updated the software here, which works pretty good. So
and his stories and the people that he knows, it made
Phil
made
Bonilla
everything.
says he flipped over at 2 miles an hour.
He flipped over it too. It's because listen. I saw him take that off a drop. He's fine.
So he's okay. He survived. So.
Yeah, he survived. He's fine.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Phil, thanks again for coming down last week with 3 weeks ago now with you and Gary. That
was a
I
classic.
still chuckle. I still laugh. I think I look at the videos. I'm like, oh my god.
They're still floating around.
They walk in with Al Grandel had the new video cut. That was hilarious.
He did.
Freaking him, Gary walking up with the banana bag and Phil recording. And I think the best part, I was telling Marie before we went live, was when they sat down, they didn't know the camera was on. That was just a microphone. Yeah. Gary had no idea. And I hit the live button. I looked at you and I went, oh, it's live.
Yeah.
And you and I knew it. And Gary still didn't know. He didn't know until he got up and walked off from the green screen.
He did great, though. He did absolutely great.
He did.
I didn't see. Yeah. Was he on tonight?
Yeah. Gary was on.
Good.
Yep. So
All right.
I know he texted me earlier. He was a little quiet tonight.
That's okay.
I'm still a supporter of Suzuki Week, but it's going to be left in the past. And it's going to be Honda Week for a little while, but
I think that Suzuki Week went out with the perfect picture, with Ken Roczen and the lights down, waving, standing on the bike.
Dennis West says we have to do some in studio interviews. So
I would love to.
We could do that. It's really not a public place where we do this. It's in my shop. It's kind of. It's definitely a redneck setup. I mean, I got racing equipment all over the place. So that's okay. But, Gary and Phil found out where the place was, and you didn't really give them an address.
I didn't. They Googled it.
They Googled it, yes.
It was found.
So, we talked about reorganizing the studio here and doing maybe a bigger table and like a Pulp MX type deal.
Yeah, have a few people come in.
Yeah, knowing that we're doing it now every 2 or 3 weeks, we could run this a little longer. I don't think we could do 4 hours, but I think we could do 2 or 3.
Yeah, a couple of hours. We normally run a couple of hours now, so I think that would be fine, you know. Yep. And if we could get people that would want to come down, that would,
I don't know if people know where the shop is, but we're about 10 minutes from the old Wareham MX track.
Yep.
So the new Diamond MX.
The Diamond MX, we're right around the corner.
Right in Wareham, right off of 195.
Yeah,
so it's
pretty easy to get to.
Pretty easy to get to, easy highway access. Phil drove 2 hours to get here.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the random drop-ins. Maybe we just throw it out there and see who shows up.
We've had a few.
Yeah, that's true. So, cool.
All right.
That's all I got, man. So I think we're gonna end the show now. So
yeah, that was awesome.
So we'll do this in a few more weeks. So we haven't picked a date yet, guys, but when we do, we'll let you know. So
absolutely.
Cool. All right,
guys.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
See ya.